The day the universe went quiet. The coffee in Dr. Elena Rodriguez's cup had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the computer screen showing data that made no sense. For the past 3 days, the Kepler Deep Space Observatory had been tracking something impossible. Massive objects were moving through space at speeds that defied everything humanity knew about physics. Elena rubbed her tired eyes and checked the calculations again. The objects were huge, each one roughly the size of Manhattan, and there were hundreds of them. They moved in perfect formation like a military fleet. But that was impossible. Humanity was alone in the universe. They had been searching for signs of life for decades and found nothing. The door to her office burst open. Dr. James Park, her research partner, stumbled in with his laptop clutched against his chest. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly. "Elena, you need to see this," he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might somehow make the situation worse. "The objects. They changed course 6 hours ago." Elena felt her stomach drop. Changed course to where? James set his laptop on her desk and opened it. The screen showed a star map with a bright yellow dot in the center. Earth. Hundreds of red dots were moving directly toward it. "They'll be here in 18 hours, James said quietly. For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. She stared at the screen, hoping it would change, hoping this was some kind of mistake. But the numbers didn't lie. Something was coming to Earth, and it was coming fast. "We need to call the government," Elena said, reaching for her phone. "I already did," James replied. "They want to see us immediately." 3 hours later, Elena found herself in a room deep beneath the Pentagon. The walls were lined with screens showing satellite feeds, radar data, and astronomical readings. Around a long table sat the most important people in the American government, including President Sarah Mitchell herself. President Mitchell was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had served as a military officer before entering politics, and it showed in the way she carried herself. When Elena finished explaining what they had discovered, the president leaned back in her chair and was quiet for a long moment. "So you're telling me that in less than 15 hours, hundreds of alien ships will reach Earth orbit?" she asked. "Yes, Madam President," Elena confirmed. "Based on their size and formation, this appears to be a military fleet." General Marcus Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, spoke up. "Dr. Rodriguez, in your opinion, is this an invasion force?" Elena looked around the room at the worried faces staring at her. "I can't think of any other reason why they would come here in such numbers." The room fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of people working in other parts of the building. The weight of what was happening pressed down on everyone present. "What are our options?" President Mitchell asked. General Kane opened a folder in front of him. "We have nuclear weapons, conventional military forces, and some experimental energy weapons, but against technology advanced enough to travel between stars." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "How long before the world knows?" the president asked. "Amateur astronomers are already posting about unusual objects in space," replied Dr. Sarah Chen, the president's science advisor. "We have maybe 6 hours before the media picks it up." President Mitchell stood up. "Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. General Kane, put all military forces on high alert. Dr. Chen, work with Elena and James to monitor the incoming fleet. I'll prepare to address the nation." As the meeting broke up, Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see General Kane looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Dr. Rodriguez, there's something else we need to discuss," he said quietly. "Something classified." Elena followed the general down a corridor she hadn't seen before. They took an elevator that went down much further than she expected. When the doors opened, she gasped. Before her was a massive underground facility filled with advanced technology she had never seen before. Scientists and technicians worked at stations that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. "Welcome to Deep Shield," General Kane said. "This facility has been preparing for this day for 30 years. Elena stared in amazement. "Preparing for what day?" "The day Earth would be contacted by hostile aliens," Kane replied. We've known they were out there for decades. We've been getting ready." As they walked through the facility, Kane explained that Deep Shield had been secretly developing defensive technologies since the 1990s. They had built quantum shields that could protect entire cities, space-based weapons platforms, and communication systems that could reach across the galaxy. "If you knew aliens existed, why didn't you tell the world?" Elena asked. Kane stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because we weren't ready. We needed time to build defenses without causing mass panic. The alien civilizations out there, they're not friendly. Most of them see younger species as threats to be eliminated." They entered a control room with a massive screen showing Earth from space. Red dots were appearing at the edge of the solar system, moving rapidly toward the planet. "They're here," announced a technician. Elena watched as hundreds of alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were enormous, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ships arranged themselves in perfect formation around Earth, like predators surrounding wounded prey. "Incoming transmission," called another technician. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen switched to show a creature that made Elena step backward in shock. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its voice was like the sound of grinding metal. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the creature said. "I am Commander Thexel of the Vanguard Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 48 of your rotational periods to surrender unconditionally." The alien commander gestured with one of his 4 arms, and the screen showed images of destroyed planets. Cities in ruins, landscapes turned to glass, species reduced to slavery. "We have conquered 800 worlds," Thexel continued. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Surrender now, and some of your species will be allowed to live as workers in our empire. Resist, and your world will burn." The transmission ended, leaving the control room in stunned silence. 48 hours, General Kane said grimly. "Not much time." Elena found her voice. "What do we do?" Kane smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a long time for this moment. "We show them why they picked the wrong planet to threaten." 6 hours later, President Mitchell appeared on television screens around the world. Behind her stood the flags of every nation on Earth. Her voice was calm and strong as she spoke to both humanity and the aliens listening. "Citizens of Earth, and to the Vanguard Empire," she began, "we have received your ultimatum. After careful consideration, representatives of every nation on Earth have reached a unanimous decision." Elena watched from the Deep Shield control room, surrounded by technicians preparing Earth's defenses. On screens around the room, she could see the alien fleet hanging in space like dark vultures. "We respectfully decline your offer," President Mitchell continued. "Earth has faced many threats throughout history. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars. We have always found a way to endure. Today will be no different." The president stepped closer to the camera. "Commander Thexel, you said our technology is primitive. You said our weapons cannot harm you. You may be right. But you made one critical mistake." Elena held her breath, knowing what was coming next. "You assumed we were alone," President Mitchell said. "You assumed we were helpless. You assumed Earth was an easy target. Commander, you have 47 hours and 54 minutes to remove your fleet from our solar system. If you do not, we will consider ourselves at war." The transmission ended. For a moment, the Deep Shield control room was silent. Then alarms began to sound. "Multiple energy signatures from the alien fleet," called a technician. "They're charging weapons." General Kane stepped forward. "All shield generators to full power. Prepare for incoming fire." Elena watched the screens as beams of pure energy lanced down from the alien ships toward Earth's major cities. Each beam contained enough power to level mountains, enough energy to boil oceans. They struck New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, and dozens of other cities around the world. Light flashed across Earth's surface. The planet seemed to glow for a moment as the alien weapons discharged their full power. Then the light faded, and Elena gasped. The cities were completely untouched. People walked the streets as if nothing had happened. Traffic moved normally. Not a single building had been damaged. In space, commands. Derthexel stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His most powerful weapons had struck their targets directly. Every instrument confirmed successful hits. But the human cities remained exactly as they were before. "Fire again," he ordered his crew. "Full power on all weapons." More energy beams struck Earth. Then kinetic projectiles the size of buildings. Then exotic matter warheads that should have cracked the planet's crust. Nothing worked. Earth's cities remained perfectly protected, as if the alien weapons were merely light shows. Commander Thexel felt something he had not experienced in his 3 centuries of conquest. Fear. In all his years of warfare, in all the worlds he had destroyed, he had never encountered anything like this. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "our weapons are having no effect. It's as if the planet has some kind of shield we cannot detect." Thexel stared at the blue and green world spinning peacefully below his fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. On the surface of that planet, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives, completely protected by technology he couldn't understand, couldn't detect, and couldn't defeat. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Thexel said, his voice much quieter than before. President Mitchell appeared on the screen again. This time she was not alone. Beside her stood people in military uniforms Elena didn't recognize, wearing insignia from no nation on Earth. "Commander Thexel," the president said, "I hope our demonstration was instructive. You now have 47 hours and 36 minutes to withdraw your fleet. I suggest you use that time wisely." The transmission ended, leaving Commander Thexel staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically, trying to understand how their most powerful weapons had been rendered completely useless. For the first time in 800 conquests, the Vanguard Empire had encountered something they couldn't defeat. And deep in the underground facilities of Earth, humanity prepared to reveal secrets that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humanity's hidden truth. Commander Thexel had not slept in 37 hours. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the primitive blue world that had somehow rendered his entire fleet powerless. Around him, his officers worked desperately to find some weakness in Earth's mysterious defenses. "Report," he demanded of his science officer. Vactel, a 6-armed creature with crystalline skin, looked up from his instruments with frustration clear in his multifaceted eyes. "Commander, our sensors cannot detect any shield generators on the planet's surface. Whatever is protecting them is beyond our ability to understand." "That's impossible," Thexel replied. "They're using primitive chemical rockets. Their weapons are metal projectiles and explosive devices. How can they have defensive technology superior to ours?" Before Vactel could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with new contacts appearing on the edge of the solar system. "Commander," called the sensor operator, his voice cracking with panic. "I'm reading massive energy signatures. Ships are dropping out of hyperspace." Thexel rushed to the tactical station and felt his blood turn cold. Hundreds of new contacts were appearing on the display, but these weren't primitive human vessels. These ships were sleek, advanced, and massive. Some were even larger than his own flagship. "Where did Hey, come from?" he whispered. The answer came in the form of a new transmission from Earth. This time, the human president was joined by a tall man in a uniform Thexel didn't recognize. Behind them, banks of advanced computers hummed quietly. "Commander Thexel," President Mitchell said, "allow me to introduce General Marcus Kane, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Force. General Kane has something to show you." The human general stepped forward. Despite being from a supposedly primitive species, Kane carried himself with the confidence of a veteran warrior. "Commander," Kane said, "for the past 30 years, Humanity has been aware of the Vanguard Empire's expansion across this galaxy. We've watched you destroy civilizations, enslave species, and spread fear among the stars. Today, that ends. The screen changed to show a star map. Red zones marked Vanguard territory, but blue zones surrounded them completely. The blue zones were larger, more numerous, and strategically positioned to cut off major Vanguard supply lines. What you're seeing, General Kane continued, is the Terran Defense Network, 47 star systems under Earth's protection, 63 species that have chosen to stand with humanity rather than submit to the Vanguard Empire. Commander Thexel stared at the map in disbelief. The blue zones represented a military alliance larger and more powerful than the Vanguard Empire. But that was impossible. Humans had barely left their own planet. "You're bluffing," Thexel transmitted back to Earth. "Your species is primitive. You cannot have technology superior to ours." General Kane smiled. "Dr. Rodriguez, would you explain Project Quantum Shield to our guest?" Elena stepped into view of the camera. After the initial shock of first contact, she had thrown herself into understanding Earth's hidden defenses. What she had learned still amazed her. "Commander Thexel," she began, "your weapons fire energy and matter through normal space-time. Our quantum shields phase our cities into parallel dimensions during attacks. Your weapons pass through the dimensional barriers harmlessly, while our cities remain perfectly safe." She gestured to a display showing complex mathematical equations. "The technology is based on principles your science hasn't discovered yet. We learned it from the Andromedans, one of the first species to join our alliance." Commander Thexel felt his certainty crumbling. The mathematics on the humans' display were indeed beyond Vanguard understanding. But how had these primitives mastered such advanced science? "The truth, Commander," President Mitchell said, "is that humanity has been preparing for this encounter for decades. When we first detected Vanguard expansion, we knew it was only a matter of time before you reached Earth. So we did what humans do best. We adapted." The screen changed to show images that made Thexel's crew gasp in shock. Human ships engaged in battles with Vanguard forces, but these weren't recent battles. The timestamps showed conflicts spanning 20 years. "We've been fighting the Vanguard Empire for 2 decades, General Kane explained. "Every time you attacked one of our allied worlds, we were there. Every time you tried to enslave a species, we stopped you. You never knew it, because we made sure you never survived to report back." Thexel's communications officer worked frantically at his station. "Commander, I'm checking our records. We have lost contact with 17 exploration fleets over the past 20 years. We assume they were lost to natural phenomena or primitive resistance." "They were lost to us," Kane confirmed. "The Terran Defense Fleet has been systematically eliminating Vanguard scout ships and advance forces. We've been studying your technology, learning your tactics, and preparing for the day you would find Earth." The tactical display updated again, showing the new ships that had arrived at the edge of the solar system. They were moving into position around the Vanguard fleet, surrounding them completely. "Commander," President Mitchell said, "you now have a choice. Surrender your fleet and face trial for crimes against sentient species, or attempt to fight your way out against forces you cannot hope to defeat." For a moment, the bridge of the Vanguard flagship was completely silent. Then Vactel, the science officer, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, I'm analyzing the energy signatures of the human ships. Their power output is incredible. Each of their vessels generates more energy than our entire fleet combined." Thexel closed his eyes. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never faced defeat. The Vanguard Empire had seemed unstoppable, their technology unmatched. Now he learned that they had been outclassed for decades by a species they had considered primitive. "How?" he asked, opening his communications channel to Earth. "How did you become so advanced so quickly?" Dr. Rodriguez answered. "Commander, you made a fundamental mistake in understanding humanity. You saw our current technology and assumed it represented our limits. But humans don't accept limits. When we learned about the threats in the galaxy, we didn't despair. We didn't hide. We reached out to other species, formed alliances, and learned everything we could. She gestured to the star map. The Andromedans taught us dimensional physics. The Cetians shared their energy manipulation techniques. The Rigel Collective showed us how to build ships that could cross the galaxy in days rather than months. Every species you tried to conquer became our teachers and allies. You see, Commander, General Kane added, the Vanguard Empire rules through fear and conquest. Humanity leads through cooperation and mutual respect. When faced with a choice between serving an empire that destroys worlds and joining an alliance that protects them, most species choose the alliance. The tactical officer interrupted with urgent information. Commander, more ships are arriving. The sensor readings are off the charts. I count over 2,000 vessels, all of unknown configuration. Through the viewports of his flagship, Thexel could see the approaching fleet, ships of a dozen different designs representing species from across the galaxy. Some were sleek and organic-looking, others were geometric and crystalline. All of them radiated power that dwarfed his own vessels. The Galactic Liberation Alliance, President Mitchell explained. 63 species working together to end the age of conquest and slavery. Today, Commander, the Vanguard Empire ends. Thexel looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. For the first time in their lives, these warriors who had conquered hundreds of worlds faced certain defeat. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had built a coalition that made the Vanguard Empire obsolete. What happens to us? Thexel asked quietly. That depends on you, General Kane replied. Officers who surrender and cooperate with war crimes tribunals will be treated fairly. Those who choose to fight will be eliminated. The commander of the Vanguard Empire looked one last time at the blue and green world that had seemed like such an easy target. On its surface, 8 billion humans continued their daily lives, protected by technology and alliances beyond his comprehension. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet, stand down, lower shields, and prepare to be boarded. Around him, his crew followed orders with the efficient sigh of professional soldiers, even in defeat. As Terran Defense Force ships moved to secure the Vanguard fleet, Thexel reflected on how completely he had underestimated the species called humanity. 3 months later, Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the TDF Enterprise, Earth's newest flagship. Through the massive windows, she watched construction ships building the first interstellar embassy in Earth's history. Representatives from 63 species would soon arrive to establish permanent diplomatic relations with humanity. Hard to believe it's been less than a year since we detected that first fleet, said a voice behind her. Elena turned to see President Mitchell, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador. The former president wore the blue uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, but she still carried herself with the authority of a world leader. It's hard to believe any of it, Elena replied. A year ago, I thought we were alone in the universe. Now we're part of an alliance spanning half the galaxy. Through the windows, they could see human ships working alongside vessels from dozens of other worlds. The sight that had once seemed like science fiction was now simply humanity's new reality. Dr. Rodriguez, Ambassador Mitchell said, I have a question for you. In your scientific opinion, what do you think made the difference? Why were we able to succeed where so many other species failed? Elena considered the question carefully. Over the past months, she had studied the histories of dozens of civilizations. She had learned about species that had submitted to the Vanguard without fighting, others that had fought alone and been destroyed, and still others that had hidden in remote corners of the galaxy. I think it's because humans have never accepted that something is impossible, she said finally. When we learned about the threats we didn't give up. We found ways to overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. We turned enemies into allies and used our curiosity as a weapon. Ambassador Mitchell nodded. And now, Elena said, looking out at the ships of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, we help other species do the same thing. We show them that no empire is too powerful to resist, no challenge too great to overcome. As they watched, a new ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. It was massive, elegant, and unlike anything Elena had seen before. The communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission. "This is Ambassador Zathara of the Magellanic Council," came a voice like singing crystal. "We represent 47 species from the neighboring galaxy. We have heard of humanity's victory over the Vanguard Empire. We request permission to open diplomatic relations and discuss mutual defense against threats from the void between galaxies." Elena looked at Ambassador Mitchell and saw the same expression on her face that had been there during the first alien contact: determination, curiosity, and the absolute certainty that humanity would find a way to meet whatever challenge came next. "Permission granted, Ambassador Zathara," Mitchell replied. "Welcome to the Terran system. We have much to discuss." As the Magellanic ship moved toward Earth's new orbital station, Elena realized that the story was far from over. The defeat of the Vanguard Empire had been just the beginning. Humanity had proven that cooperation could triumph over conquest, that curiosity could overcome fear, and that even the most impossible challenges could be met with determination and alliance. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and threats beyond imagination. But for the first time in their history, humans were not alone in facing them. They had allies, friends, and the knowledge that together, no empire could stand against the power of free species working toward a common goal. In the depths of space, the age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun, and humanity, the species that had once thought itself alone in the universe, now stood as guardians of freedom for countless worlds across the stars.